Who's number one on my new big board after the NBA Combine? Find out next on Locked On NBA Big Board. Welcome into Locked On NBA Big Board. I'm Leif Thulin, credentialed NBA draft analyst, attendee of the 2023 and 2024 NBA Combine, and lover of college hoops. So I've seen all these guys a ton, and I'm excited to tell you guys about my new and updated big board ranking 1 through 10, and then I'll publish it along, and you guys can see more than just 1 through 10. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off, everyone. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now for free on Google Play or on the App Store. Game on. Today's show is a fun one. Like I said, I've been working on this for a while where, where I will take you through my logic on my big board, and I've been compiling it since the NBA Combine and well before, but this has some changes since the NBA Combine. So let's dive right in. My number one is not Alex Sarr, so that is the shocker right there. My number one is Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham is a skinny guard. Everyone knows that, and he didn't really play in those things, so this doesn't change. But I've always been high on him, and I've talked about him a fair amount. Well, Dillingham, to me, has the best individual creation in this class, getting a shot whenever he wants in a college spacing. And that's something because it's not very good spacing. So I think he could be a pick and roll star. He does not project as a defender at all. So you need to run offense through him. And so I understand that doesn't bode that great. Like the archetype of this are Trae Youngs, the Darius Garlands. And would you say you can build a championship team around them? Probably not. And I agree with that. That said, I do think he's got a chance to score better than just about anyone else. Like if you ask me, who's the most likely player to score 20 in this class? It's him, and pretty easily. What are his strengths? He's a dynamic shot creator. He uses shifty change of direction moves to slither wherever he wants on the floor. He can get in the paint for runners or crafty layups, or pull up from behind screens, behind the arc, and do everything in between, whether it's a mid-range jump shot off a step back, whether it's a catch and shoot three. He drained nearly half of those, shooting about 50% off the catch. He hit them off movement and on standard spot ups. He's also willing to cut off the ball when he played off the ball and Reed Sheppard had the ball in his hands. He also was excellent at hitting threes off the dribble, and that's a real weapon today in the NBA. I think he could be extremely good in pick and roll, snaking off screens, creating for himself and others, maybe hitting the bigs in the short roll. And if he had a lob threat, would be sensational. I would love to see him paired with Victor Wembanyama. I mean, who wouldn't want to pair with Victor Wembanyama? But personally, that's exactly who I want to see him paired with. I think he's a playmaker for others. He makes live dribble passes to the opposite side of the court with lefty passes, righty passes, live dribble, and he reads the defense pretty well and makes quick decisions, keeping the ball moving. Defensively, like I said, he's not great. He often falls out of position by getting handsy or simply just doesn't know exactly what the defense is doing. But I think part of that is scheme and a willingness to gamble. Like I said, he's sleight of frame, so that would be a detriment. And I think offensively, he can refine his passing and take away some turnovers as he gets better with a higher volume and a higher responsibility at the NBA level. I like him more and more as I think about him because my philosophy is typically drafting upside, and he's the type of player that can be a system on one side, a la Trae Young, like I said. I will say I don't think he's the type of talent pre-draft that Trae Young was because he was unmissable at Oklahoma. But if anyone's going to score 20 points and be the system, it's Rob Dillingham. And to me, he's a watered-down Trae Young in terms of skill set, but in terms of impact, he reminds me of Darius Garland, someone I think can score 21, 22 points a game, get you 6, 7 assists. He can be an all-star, but he's not an all-pro. That's who my number one is. My number two is Alex Sarr. Sarr may be the safest player in this draft because he's truly big. Like seeing him in person was important for him because he filled out and looked coordinated. He didn't look as explosive and as athletic as some people may have expected. At least I didn't think he looked that way. But he was filled out and strong, and he wasn't lengthy and gangly. Sarr, to me, is a poor man's Evan Mobley. My concern about him is he did not look as agile to me yet as those he's compared to, like defensive aces and Jonathan Isaac or Jaren Jackson Jr. He shot it well at the combine drills, inspiring some faith, but his numbers probably don't lie that much, as he shoots 28% from three and 70% from the free throw line. Those are uninspiring numbers, but the touch did look pretty good. I see a big, fluid guy who defensively is very good with solid offensive foundation, which is an important piece, but not the guy you build around. Furthermore, if he goes number one and expects to be an all-star, I think that's because Trae Young, who possessed the number one pick, that's the Atlanta Hawks, is that great. But if evaluating devoid of knowing who picks where, I think he's more of a double more so than a home run. And safety is more of an allure at the top end of this draft than many others, because teams don't want to miss. Maybe they don't want to miss more than they want to hit. And that, I think, actually plays in the benefit of a guy like Alex Sarr. Number 3 for me is Stefon Castle. This is a really interesting one because some of the conversations I've had throughout the years have convinced me different ways, and my eyes saw some of the really good, and then I had some skepticism. So I've moved him up from the combine, partially because of his performance at the combine, but partially because of the others who I thought I may end up here did not look that good at the combine. I have reevaluated how I've seen him because I've had some conversations, some with James, some with Richard, and scouts are people I spoke to at the combine. There's optimism he will shoot it better, as he demonstrated with the 18 out of 25 in the star drill that really garnered the attention of scouts. He also measured very well. There was concern that he was only 6'2.5" or whatever it was, but it turned out that was Devin Carter, and he's about 6'6.5" without shoes, about 6'7" when he puts on a pair of basketball shoes. And that's huge. And the other thing that's huge is he's trying to be a point guard. He's not working out for teams that already have a point guard set, and he's working out for top 10 teams. So that limits it. But it also says, yes, you have to be a point guard and you have to be good at that. There's more of a risk factor associated with it. That's fair. That's fine. But it inspires a lot of potential belief, because if he's a point guard, it makes him huge for the position. It alleviates some of the concerns off the ball, because if you're off the ball and you don't shoot it very well, then what are you going to be doing at the NBA level? Because there's fewer and fewer of the Andre Jackson role he did so well at UConn, where he was a slasher off the ball and had design plays. That was part of my concern. James mentioned that he likens him to Jimmy Butler in the way that the numbers aren't super glamorous, but the effectiveness is still there. The shooting numbers aren't going to wow you, but he's going to make winning plays and improve and make plays all throughout the year. That meant something to me. I voiced my concerns earlier in previous big boards, other episodes we've done, about him being maximized at UConn. A lot of people say, well, you don't get to see what Stefon Castle could do at UConn. That's totally true. I agree with that. But it's a lot of projection right there to assume he can take a starring role when he didn't on his college team, and then you turn the reins over to the franchise. So you can see why some teams would be hesitant to do so. I mentioned the concern about how he was in a role that was perfectly tailored a year prior to a similar player in Andre Jackson, who's now with the Milwaukee Bucks as an athlete off the ball. To me, he doesn't have the makings of a star, but as I've said, in this draft, it's less about getting a star, but more about assuring you can nab a high-end role player. And Castle measuring well, shooting it better than expected, and there being an immediate positive on the defensive end has me feeling good. He's a high-field playmaker who controls tempo by playing at his own pace. He can change rhythm, decelerate and accelerate very well. Has great strength and body control on drives, and he makes layups as a freshman. That's not something you see too often. He makes simple plays and the right plays all the time. I think UConn makes the reads easier, but he did demonstrate point guard skills in high school, which I think is important to go view the high school tape to see what potential there is as someone who has the ball in his hands. Like I said, he's a good finisher at the rim using both hands. And while I don't think he has a calling card, he's not a great shooter. He's not a great playmaker. He's not the best athlete ever. He has a ton of really good skills, and I think he's a master of a bunch. He's very good at a bunch of things, and maybe not a master at one. But I think he's got more potential in a lot of those areas that he is 75th percentile at, compared to some who are masters of one trait, but not masters to the level of being stars in the upcoming draft. The other one last concern I would give on him is he missed a month to begin the season with a meniscus injury. So there's a little bit of an injury history, but Stefon Castle will be the biggest mover from my board, just because I gained some faith based on speaking to some people and watching him shoot. I have more faith in his jump shot coming along than some of the others who are deficient in terms of the numbers that say, can you shoot or not? Well, let me know what you guys think, and keep listening, because I got more players that are moving a lot. The next couple picks, there's a lot of movement between those type of players. So let me know what you guys think on that. Castle's definitely one that I'm going to continue evaluating and thinking more on. Coming up next, we'll continue to explore my board, and I'll explain where I have different guys and why my board has changed. But first, a word from Game Time. All righty. Have you guys ever been to a playoff game? Because I have, and they are awesome. And it's never been a better time to go than now because of Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. That's pretty awesome. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They have great last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, and easy to find and buy MLB tickets, and for every kind of event in your area. It doesn't have to be sports. They can do it for concerts as well. Views from the seats in the venue is a feature I really like, and I did it when I was perusing White Sox tickets to buy while I was at the Combine. So you get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, and I can tell you it's worth it to truly know where you'll be sitting at the same time. It's a really cool feature, but it's also extremely useful and a real life value because I want to see the action and not have it obscured, and it'll tell you exactly what you're seeing. Also, there's this great feature that's called the lowest price guarantee, and if you don't get the lowest price, Game Time will guarantee you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Or in this case, Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code Locked On NBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. And download Game Time today. Last minute tickets apply. Lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back. I'm Leif Thulin. I got one more question for you guys. Are you guys watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On podcast, your team every day. Well, welcome back into Locked On NBA Big Board. I'm Leif Thulin. You guys know me. I went to the Combine, watched a ton of college hoops. Well, this next guy, not a college hooper, a player that's been largely in different spots than everyone's board. Depends who you talk to, if they like him or not. And that's Ron Holland, is number 4 for me. Holland is 4th on my current board based on my preferred philosophy of the top guys should have the most chance to reach stardom. But, and I'm going to give you a big but on this one, in this class where you're drafting pieces to help a team forward rather than be the dude to build around, I had to tinker with my board, and I moved him down. I moved him down from 3 to 4, and I think he might be trending further down still. But he could be a steal on raw experience alone. Holland has a shot to become one of the best in this class because he's young, has experience in big games, scored 20 per game roughly in the G League, and he's a dynamic athlete with a high motor, defensive ability, passing, and impressive finishing. Those are the positives. Holland has glaring deficiencies in his game as a shooter, and statistically, I work for Locked On Jazz. David Locke has an analytically derived formula that tells you, can these guys play in the league and what are the players that kind of resembled them? Well, statistically, he would have been eliminated as a shooter according to those metrics that have been largely successful. But I can see him being an RJ Barrett. Coming out, RJ Barrett had similar weaknesses, not a great shooter, but people saw him as a potential star, and he hasn't quite been a star, but he's found ways to be effective at every level, found ways to score while at Duke and with the Knicks and now the Raptors, and was an impact player at every level. Holland's floor is not as high as some because there is concern if he's off the ball, he doesn't have the ball in his hands, and he doesn't shoot it very well, then how does he impact offensively? Like defensively, yes, he can be an energy guy, but that makes you think he's more of a Josh Okogie than a star. So that's a little more boom or bust than many are comfortable with. But I have faith he can impact offense. And if that level of an upside guy is there as the draft continues on, like for my Utah Jazz at 10, I'd be pretty happy to take a swing at him. I think he's probably the second or third most likely guy to be an all-star in this class. And I typically am kind of I'm a believer in potential. And he's been an All-American, a big name guy forever. And that sometimes means something. And in this case, I'm willing to gamble on talent. Like I said, if he falls, you gotta give him a chance. His pros and cons, just in a note-friendly form. He's an explosive finisher at the basket. He gets to the rim, hangs in the air, gets through contact, draws fouls. He he's pretty decisive in the half court. In transition, he'll run and beat the defense. In half court, he's going to actively cut, attack closeouts, and attack the rim. He's a better shooter with rhythm, aka off the dribble, than he is off the catch. And his shot looked better form-wise than maybe the Cody Williams, the Matas Buzelis's, but he still didn't shoot very well at the combine. Defensively, he makes a lot of money with his energy and versatility. And then he's also one of the youngest players in this class, and that sometimes matters. I'm not typically the biggest believer in age being the big determinant, but I think it helps when you're young and you've played in a lot of big games. Like I said, his deficiencies are shooting, but that one's going to be interesting to see where he stays for me. But right now he's at 4. At 5, I've compared him to as a foil, someone who's very different than Holland, but regarded similarly and maybe higher by most. At 5, I have Zaccharie Risacher, who in this draft, where safety is prioritized more than most, he's moving up for me. So what makes him safe? It's his archetype. The archetype rarely fails, but also has not produced stars or not even all stars. And for everydayers, this may be a little bit repetitive because I talked to you guys about this same logic with James. We talked about the debate about Risacher. Well, the best 3-and-D archetype that's tall and is a true sniper is Michael Porter Jr., and he's very good, but he's been nowhere near an all-star, much less a true star. If he's compared to Michael Porter Jr. when Michael Porter Jr. entered the draft, Risacher is not close. He wasn't close to the athlete Porter was prior to back injuries, and it's unlikely he shoots it as well as Porter has in his NBA career from deep. So it makes him that much of a pick that teams would be pretty happy to take, and I've even seen him at 1, according to some. Well, here's the summary that I wrote about his strengths and weaknesses, and I wrote this for the Utah Jazz when I was hosting Locked On Jazz. But here, I think it applies here. Risacher has a slight chance of hitting it big by being that exceptional of a shooter as a wing at 6'9", and that's the formula. But to be an all-star, the best at that archetype is Michael Porter Jr., as I just said, and I think that's an overly generous comp. But there's been a lot of guys of that archetype who have turned out well. And in the case of Michael Porter Jr., if he hadn't had injuries, he had a case to go number 1. So this is not an indictment on Risacher. Risacher figures to be a good player because he can really shoot it, shooting as well as 48% for a good portion of the year in a pro league, even though those numbers dipped a little bit. He's fluid, not explosive on the ball, but he seems to be a heady player, and he's a safer bet in what is a mysterious draft to be a solid role player because I think he's molded perfectly for what the NBA covets today. He reminds me a little bit of Cam Johnson, who right now is getting $24 million per year in his second contract. So that's a really valuable player. And he's also significantly younger than when Cam Johnson was drafted 11th by the Phoenix Suns. So that's maximizing a role and getting paid to get better in another top-notch way. These guys, everyone's getting paid a lot, but those type of role players really make bank. And I think there's going to be a belief that, hey, this guy's going to be good immediately, can get really good. And that's the type of player that wins today. There's a reason Cam Johnson was paid $24 million. You could say it's an overpay based on production, but Risacher should be better. And that type of player is what the NBA wants right now. So what is he? He's a potential knockdown shooter. For much of the year, he was in the upper 40s from 3. He's a solid ball handler for his size. He rarely gets chances to generate for himself on the offense, but he makes good decisions, quick decisions as a passer with the ball. And if his handle continues to develop, he could provide great value. He also played very, very well recently for his team professionally in the playoffs in the French league. And that matters. We saw Bilal Koulibaly skyrocket because of doing so last year. Risacher does struggle at the rim, making not very many in the half court. He's only making 51% this year. Years prior, he was about 38% on rim attacks in the half court in the prior 2 seasons. Shooting's the big key. If he shoots it really well and he's got that size, I think he'll likely be a top 5 pick. At number 6, I have Donovan Clingan because that guy has a defined role. That's just as simple as it is. It's a defined role, and despite his poor measurable athleticism at the NBA Combine, featuring a low vertical jump, slow running 3/4 court sprints, that doesn't matter for a center. The agility drill didn't matter very much. Well, what he is he's a perfect drop coverage rim protector, a deterrent at the rim, a guy who can make good passes if he catches it in the short roll or in the post, and he will be a good lob threat. Clingan, and for what he showed at the Combine, if we're sticking with that, he improved as a shooter, clearly, from what he was at UConn at the Combine. He'd been working on his shot, and I don't think it matters in terms of shooting threes, but it does matter for free throws as he'll be fouled. It matters if he can develop touch on jump hooks. The fact that the coordination, the fluidity of the shot looked good for him impressed me. And so I moved him up in my board because the more I thought about him, the more I thought, wow, this guy has a role and a pathway to being impressive. Now, do I see all-star potential for him? Not at all. I really don't. So I don't love the idea of taking a guy top 3 that I don't see that potential. So that's why I have him a little bit lower. That's personal preference, though, because I think he figures to have one of the most clear-cut defined roles of any player in this draft. I would compare Clingan to Walker Kessler, but he's more skilled near the hoop. Maybe not quite the speedster, the rim runner that Walker Kessler is, but I think he'll deter shots at a similar level, be good with the ball in his hands, maybe pirouette into hook shots, reverse layups, and dunks. I think Clingan likely is a top 5 pick. I have him number 6, as I mentioned here. But I mean, what do you guys think? Is that crazy? I don't know. That's my top 6, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So can comment in the YouTube videos. And coming up next, we'll discuss the final guys to round up my top 10. But first, a word from Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, and I did. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with a friend to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings and heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton and there's just changes in everything. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And then there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Welcome back to Locked On NBA Big Board. I'm Leif Thulin. I attended the combine and I watched all these guys up close, and I didn't want the combine to take too much of a priority in terms of mattering more than what I watched on film all year. But there are things to observe. And so you may notice some guys falling, and this is where it gets crazy in terms of my board. At number 7 is where my board has really shifted. And 7 through 10, definitely wild. I would even argue 7 through 12, but I think I'm only going to get through 10 because of time. And maybe I'll talk about it more, and I'm definitely going to post my board along with it. At number 7 for me is Nikola Topic, who, as I've said, could be the guy with the very highest upside should everything pan out. I've said that in terms of an episode James and I did where we talked about all-star potential. I thought Topic was up there. I've told this to Richard, and you guys probably heard me say it. Topic, I think if his shot comes around, maybe the best player in this class, just based on his unique style of play, level of success at a pro league, size, and ability to process rapidly. Those are unique traits. Topic is 6'6", 18 years old, 89th percentile in the pick and roll, scores well around the rim without being reliant on athleticism. That's all really, really good. He has deceptive burst and just needs to be able to punish players for going under screens, because I think he can bend defenses, unlike many, with his playmaking upside, being able to see over the defense and having had the ball in his hands from a young age. And not just at a young age against people that are at various high schools. He's done it professionally and had the ball in his hands from a young age against good teams, pro teams, and that matters. I think his height, guile around the rim, incredible processing speed, and decision-making on pick and rolls make him an alluring pick, especially once you get beyond top 5. But I think he could very well still be picked in the top 5. I've had him top 5 most of the year, and a little bit of injury concern, and in the latest batch of film watching has put some pause in there for me. The floor is lower if he doesn't shoot it well and does not command the respect of the defense. That's just how it is. And thus his best attributes would get slightly mitigated by the lack of the threat of a shot, because teams would go under the defense, under the screen on defense, and make it hard for him to bend the defense while driving and see over, help defenders, which are some of his unique traits. Let me know what you guys think about Topic, because I know it's a mixed bag for many. That's my perception. I still think he's got a high potential. Floor's a little lower. And the last batch of film I watched, I wasn't wowed by the way he created space. I didn't know how it would translate to the NBA. At number 8, there's a new entry on my top 10, and that's Tidjane Salaün. He plays for Cholet, and in a win against Paris recently, that was last week while I was at the combine. I believe it was on a Wednesday. The 18-year-old had 19 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 8 of 13 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3. I watched that film, and I was really impressed. I've already liked him throughout the year. I had him number 12 or 13 before changing this board as I went to the combine. But Salaün is considered to be very raw and toolsy, but big numbers in a big game mean a lot. And that's the case in every draft. Last year, we saw Bilal Coulibaly skyrocket a year ago. Salaün is bigger, a better shooter, and his numbers are better and Koulibaly in what was considered a really good draft went number 7. Salaün, for those of you who don't know, is 6'9", 210 pounds, 18 years old, scored about 10 points, 4 rebounds, and assists, 40% from the field, 32 or so from 3, 83 from the free throw line. He's pretty good. He's a locked-in defender who is just a nuisance off the ball, using his length and ability to influence drives both at the rim and in passing lanes. He's always contesting shots. He gets his hands on the ball, uses his length and quickness and ability to make proper reads at a young age and be a versatile defender who can switch across multiple positions. He shot the ball pretty well from 3. At one point, he was around 39%, fell back down to about 33, has shot well once again. Those numbers fluctuate depending when you look at the services for numbers because he's playing in the playoffs. Sometimes they count the playoffs, sometimes they don't. But the shot looks real. Like, it looks consistent. He needs to work on it more, and I believe in that shot. He's an athletic finisher who makes himself available for lobs or running hard on the break, and he's active in the course of an offense. He doesn't stand on one side or compromise spacing. I think he'd be best for a team that utilizes a lot of off-ball motion to amplify his athletic ability in the half court. He's raw. I agree. I know that's going to be the consensus and the criticism, but so are Cody Williams, Ron Holland, and Matas Buzelis, who, if you really think about it, at least 2 of those guys, Cody Williams and Ron Holland, I think are probably more primed to have success defensively than offensively if they were to go into the NBA. So why not make a swing at Tidjane Salaün, who has amazing tools, is playing at a high level, and is playing better at the end of the year in a high-level league as compared to guys who kind of, you've seen a lot of them. They haven't played recently. And I saw Ron Holland and Cody Williams and Matas Buzelis shoot poorly from 3 at the combine. Salaün on that very same day, or maybe a day later, went and played against Paris, engineered an upset victory, and was the best player. So he's a guy that's moving up my board, might even move up further the more I watch. Well, at number 9, I know I said I'm doing a top 10, but the next 3 guys I had a really difficult time differentiating. And honestly, you could just say like 9A, B, and C, but that's not how it works. So at number 9, I have Reed Sheppard, which is up from where I had him prior and has less to do with him testing well athletically, which has drawn oohs and ahs from publicity. Like, everyone says, oh, Reed Sheppard, 42-inch vertical. Is he Steph with the same measurements, but a 42-inch vertical who shot 52% from 3? No, he's not. But something that does matter is the evaluators that I spoke to have confidence he can play point guard. And at least you saw some ability to move up in that regard. I still wonder how well he navigates pick and rolls, because he's to me not quite a point guard, but I also had the guy that I think could be the number 1 pick on the team in Rob Dillingham. And that was who was playing point guard. So maybe it's the Kentucky thing where you didn't get to see it because they had other talent, and Calipari didn't manage the talent properly. If indeed Sheppard can play point guard, I still wonder about how well he navigates. That's one thing. The other reason I bump him up, though, is I was unimpressed with the shooting of Cody Williams, Matas Buzelis, and the shooting is the premier skill in the NBA that's coveted right now. And so he'll have a way to contribute. Like, even though he's small, and I don't think his stocks, his steals plus blocks actually mean much. But I can't turn my head and pretend that him having a defined skill as a shooter doesn't mean anything. And those players who may have more potential because they're bigger, in Cody Williams and Matas Buzelis, shooting poorly, shooting knuckleballs, and even with no defense, no time pressure, didn't look confident shooting the ball, inspired faith. Like, that worried me, even though I'd been pretty high on Cody Williams throughout the entire process. I've lost some faith in Cody Williams. And at the very worst, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I see Reed Sheppard is somewhat similar to a guy like Peyton Pritchard. And maybe that's, everyone's going to say, oh, it's because they're white and they're smaller, but they're both really good shooters. They can run the course of an offense and be able to have a unique skill as a shooter that moves them up. I think Sheppard's probably better than Pritchard, and he's young, considerably younger when he came out, whereas Pritchard played all 4 years at Oregon. But that's the archetype of a player I see from him. Maybe he's better, but I still have less star potential belief in Reed Sheppard than probably most. But he has moved up my board, and there's the reason why. At number 10, I have Dalton Knecht over the likes of Cody Williams and Matas Buzelis, whom, in the case of Cody Williams, I really think might move his way back up. And I've had quite high throughout various parts of the year. It just depends the film you watch. The most recent thing I saw on him, and some of the people I spoke to have been kind of down on Cody Williams. And that's what it is. And I know you got to be individualistic, but it's hard not to listen to people say that, and you watch him and he shoots really poorly despite his 42%. Like 42%, if you look at that, he projects as a good shooter. But I told you, volume's the indication I believe in, and he shot just about 2 per game. And that meant he wasn't terribly confident in his threes. He was injured throughout much of the year. Well, he's supposed to be healthy, and he didn't look terribly athletic to me. And if you're 6'8" in a wing, you probably want to be athletic. And I'm not saying he's not. But the rationale for Knecht, though, in the top 10 is simple. The dude is a sniper. He can and will be able to score at the NBA level. And I'm not saying as the top option to score, but he'll be able to score in a complementary fashion. To me, Knecht is the most bankable shooter in the class. I made a comment to Richard as we were watching him saying, I bet Knecht makes the most shots because he's such a workaholic. The nerves of shooting in a big arena won't impact him because he's put in so much work, and his shot looked effortless. He shot 20 of 25 from 3, had a 39-inch vert, displaying athleticism, and he also performed very well in led the wings in agility drills at 2.79 seconds in the shuttle, and a second place pro lane drill just over 10 seconds. I mean, those are good indications of athleticism. He's a total package with not a ton of upside, but to be the top guy, but he can always be a guy to me that'll fill a box score if you leave him open. He knocks down threes, comes off pin downs, attacks closeouts, is able to take smaller players to the block and score. He made smart reads all the time at Tennessee when Knecht was doubled or forced away from the ball. So I think you can see someone who scores 14 points a game for a few years in their career, and he's never going to be a good defender, but he at least has size to make up for it and has the athleticism to maybe be a good rebounder to make up for his lack of maybe on-ball defensive prowess. Yeah, I mean, one more thing about him is he shoots threes in a plethora of ways. He knocks them down on catch and shoots, does it from deep range, off of curls, different footwork. I think he can go to a team like Memphis at 9. I know that's a Tennessee to Tennessee type of thing, but it makes sense. That's a team that's older, veteran. They're looking for players who can help John Morant, their established core, Desmond Bane, those type of players that are able to play and make an impact earlier are in vogue. Look at Jaime Jaquez is the trendy example, but it's happened for a while. And in a class where you maybe don't look as much for potential, you may look for immediate returns. Dalton Knecht's a guy for that. So that'll do it for me. That's my top 10. Let me guys know what you think. For those of you wondering, how far did Cody Williams or Matas Buzelis fall? Not very far, 11 and 12. So I think they have a chance to come back up. I need to watch a little more film, convince myself of different roles, and start thinking about which team should pick whom. And that'll be up next for a lot of the episodes for Locked On NBA Big Board. But that'll do it for today. And I appreciate you guys listening as always. I have one last question for you guys. Have you guys listened to this yet? Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On Plus, our national sports shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you guys for listening. It's been a pleasure. I'm excited to talk with you guys more, and I will probably have a follow-up with maybe my 10 through 20 coming out soon, or maybe a debate with Richard or James about how they perceive my top 10 and maybe a mock draft coming up. So make sure to stay tuned for all that. I appreciate you guys for listening, as do they. And make your next listen Locked On NBA. Listen to the latest and the greatest about the NBA and the conference finals. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon.